Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to the Sensational Experience, episode number 7, here on the NoDQ.com YouTube channel. I am, of course, the Pennsylvanian sensation, Greg Cherry, and we're back with more of your questions this week. Yes, no Pennsylvania flag behind me, just a different locale in the house, but we're going to still answer your questions anyway. It doesn't matter where I am. I could be in my car, I could be somewhere, and it doesn't really matter. So here we go. This question is from Vanegas. Vanegas 9469. This is from Instagram, actually. My first Instagram question. I feel special. Hi, first time asker, and congrats on being on the NoDQ.com team. Like how you say your take on the superstars on the matches. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much. My question is, will Shark Boy or Abyss come to WWE? I know it sounds silly, and it might be too late for them, but like Aaron says, never say never. But will it happen? The thing with Abyss, I don't know if this story made the rounds, but Abyss was actually talked about being brought into WWE over a decade ago to work a program with The Undertaker, and Abyss turned it down to stay with TNA. Now, TNA at the time was still doing pretty well. TNA was actually really thriving back in like 2005, 2006 timeframe. Now it might be a little bit too late for him. The fact is, Abyss is still good. But there's really, if you look at the talent roster, there's really no need to bring him in for anything. And the same goes with Shark Boy. And Shark Boy, let's be honest, hasn't been on the relevant radar for big-time pro wrestling in years. I mean, he's worked independent shows, I'm sure, but nobody's actually, you don't hear people screaming. It's like, when is Shark Boy going to be the WWE? You just don't hear that. Maybe Abyss a little bit. Definitely more about a decade ago, but not so much now. I don't think either one of them, not saying they're not talented. Obviously they are. Otherwise they wouldn't have made it to TNA. Then again, Jenna Morasco. That notwithstanding, I just don't know if they would fit in this current WWE system or even NXT. I don't know if there's really a need for them. The talent roster is solid as far as the WWE goes, both on Raw and SmackDown and NXT as well. That's just my personal opinion. This next question is from, on Twitter, it's from Brian at LBrianLazaro5. Can you rank all the WWE pay-per-views of 2017 so far, excluding NXT? So not including the TakeOver specials. Okay. I would probably have to put... let's see. I would probably have to put Elimination Chamber first, if we're ranking best to worst. Elimination Chamber was a solid event. The Chamber match itself was fantastic. It was a solid outing overall for the SmackDown brand, and I quite enjoyed that show. Next, I would... man. There's been like, what, 7 or 8 pay-per-views this year already? Maybe not that many. I would have to say WrestleMania would probably be next. WrestleMania, definitely better than 32. I've brought this up on a previous show. Not as good as 30 and 31, but still pretty solid. So WrestleMania will probably be right after the Elimination Chamber. Just because of the event that it is, I'm going to put the Royal Rumble next. Royal Rumble is by far my favorite event of all time. Rumble match had a lot of build-up, had a lot of promise, but it ended up being kind of weak. AJ Styles and John Cena, match of the year candidate. Decent rest of the show, but the Rumble match was kind of disappointing. Especially because, I like Ty Dillinger, don't get me wrong, but him is the only surprise entrant. That was kind of weak. After that, let's see what's left. Fastlane, Payback, and... I'm going to have to put Backlash next, I think. I enjoyed Backlash. I know there's a big controversy about Jinder Mahal winning the WWE Championship. Um, Controversy is that people don't like it, not exactly like anything that WWE has to worry about, but I thought Backlash was a pretty solid show. And that basically sums up how I feel about the Raw side of things, because I'm putting Fastlane after Backlash, and I'm putting Payback on the bottom of the list. I don't think I missed any. I almost feel like I am, but I don't think I missed any. Fastlane was just... It just felt like a Raw to just get to WrestleMania at that point. You know, Goldberg beating Kevin Owens in 21 seconds was kind of like, are you serious? I mean, storyline-wise, it made sense, but it's like, ugh. But in defense of that, I much would have rather had Goldberg versus Lesnar main event WrestleMania. Because it would have been for a championship, and I actually quite enjoyed their match. Some people didn't. I did. And Payback, the only reason I rate Payback so low is because the House of Horrors match was an abomination. I mean, there was an indie match, which I won't bring up the name of the company for their protection, but it was called a Graveyard Match. And the idea of it was good, the execution of it was terrible. Which is exactly what I think of when I think of the Payback match, the House of Horrors. It was a good idea in theory, but the execution of it was completely terrible. And it kind of made the rest of the show forgettable for me. I don't even know what main evented that show. Oh, Strowman and Reigns. I guess that match was decent. But I don't know. Payback was pretty weak in comparison to previous outings. That was a good question. That was a lengthy question. These next couple are from Slow Motion at Slow Motion for you. I'm not rapping again, so don't expect it. Can you please watch the WrestleMania Rewind title Motor City main event on the network? I have questions I would like to ask you on it. Well, I guess if I would have paid attention to what this was, I would have watched it. My guess would be that this is in regards to WrestleMania 13. Was there another one in Chicago? Or Motor City? Detroit, sorry. Guess that would have been 23. Anyway, I'll check it out, and you can send me the questions so I can get to them on the next episode. That's my fault. I don't pay attention. This next question is about WrestleMania 23, so there you go. Do you think having Orton and Edge in the WrestleMania 23 Money in the Bank match was a waste for them? In my opinion, they should have had a rated RKO one-on-one. I don't think it was a waste for them. And I just want to go on a rant about the WrestleMania 23 Money in the Bank match. I don't have a problem with who won. I've been a Mr. Kennedy fan for a long time, since he first debuted on Velocity as Mr. Anderson. I'm a big Ken Anderson fan. I'm just going to put that out there right now. Got to meet him at a show in Meadville last month. It was pretty awesome. I don't have a problem with who was in it. The fact that it was the first ever 8-man Money in the Bank ladder match, not a problem. It added to the star power, in my opinion. Edge being taken out, I don't know if he was injured prior to the match, but he and Jeff Hardy, I don't remember if Jeff ever re-entered that match, but both of them were taken out relatively early in that match. And I don't have a problem with all the storylines that happened as a result of that. I mean, Edge and Orton had their blow-off match like 2 or 3 weeks later on Raw. So They really weren't broken up to the point where they needed a WrestleMania match against each other. They were like teasing separation, but it wasn't anything that you didn't really have a build behind it. Yes, it's Orton and Edge who can have fantastic matches against each other, but there needed to be more of a build. Now, granted, in defense of what you're saying, that Orton and Edge could have had a WrestleMania match, with a lack of build-up, Benoit and Angle didn't have much of a build-up. They had 6 days of build-up. They had one episode of Raw, and I don't even know if they carried that over to SmackDown, to be honest. I haven't watched the WrestleMania or the SmackDown prior to WrestleMania 17, so I can't tell you without watching that whether they continue the build for Benoit and Angle or not, but they started the build for that match 6 days before the pay-per-view. And it's Benoit and Angle, so they're going to have a fantastic match. Would Orton and Edge have done the same? Possibly. But I don't think their inclusion in Money in the Bank was a waste. I think it added to the star power, and it meant more for Mr. Kennedy, who won it. Now that I've answered the question, I want to go on a little bit of a rant here about the WrestleMania 23 Money in the Bank match. And really the aftermath, because the match was good. The aftermath of that was Edge taking out Mr. Kennedy and taking his Money in the Bank briefcase. Which I understand why they did, because The Undertaker was injured too. So they needed a way to get the title off of The Undertaker. So they used Money in the Bank, but Kennedy was injured too. Here's my problem. Mr. Kennedy had announced previously that he was going to cash in at WrestleMania 24. So even if Kennedy was out 6 to 8 months from that time, he could have kept the Money in the Bank briefcase, cashed it in at WrestleMania 24, and become champion. It's a personal bitch that I have that Kennedy didn't get to cash in the briefcase. And I don't think he'll ever get the opportunity again, because he'll probably never work for WWE again, unfortunately. I always enjoyed him. I enjoyed him in WWE, I enjoyed him in TNA, I enjoyed him on the indie show that I went to last month. I just enjoy his character, I enjoy his in-ring work. But maybe that's just me. It seems like rants are the things to do these days, so I just wanted to rant that Mr. Kennedy should have had his chance to cash in the briefcase. The whole thing with Edge beating him for the briefcase, I think, was garbage. Just my opinion. And the final question is from, I'm going to butcher the crap out of this name, Amizade dos Santos. Maybe not. At ADS_AMI. What would be a better finisher? Every cool finisher now is a setup move in 2017. See, I don't know. See, I personally have a finisher. Like, if I was ever to get into the business, it's like a modified DDT. But I don't think the problem is that finishers are being used to set up other moves. I mean, if you think about it, if you really suspend your disbelief, any move could be a finisher. Like, if you connect with one shot, if you watch UFC, and it's like, you see these guys fighting, you see one connect with a right hook, that right hook could be it. I mean, you could hit one shot, boom, done. So if you suspend your disbelief long enough, then that could be a possibility. That notwithstanding, I do think that finishers being kicked out of almost all the time does hurt their credibility. Like, I was just actually watching Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect from SummerSlam for the Intercontinental title. And I remember how big of a deal it was for Bret Hart to kick out of the Perfect Plex. And Bobby Heenan screaming on commentary, nobody's ever done that before. But I hate when people, like, kick out of the RKO. And they make a big deal out of it. Like, whoa, that should have finished the match. It's like, yeah, but you know how many people have kicked out of the RKO? It's probably in the double digits, people that have done that. People that have kicked out of the AA. I mean, Shawn Michaels kicking out of the Tombstone at WrestleMania 25 was a big deal. And then people started doing it every year at Mania. It's like, well, the moment's kind of ruined. It's like, the Tombstone should finish a match. I'm going on a second rant here. This is the rant-filled episode of TSE. The finishers should be protected for a lot of the guys. That once the finisher is hit, boom. I understand wanting to create drama. I understand wanting to create suspense. It's like, this match is never going to end. It's like, that's why you have signature moves. Signature moves that could finish the match, but they don't necessarily. Finishers should finish the match. Submissions I'll give a pass to, because if you reach the ropes, then that's something different. But impactful finishers like the RKO, like the AA, like the F5, etc., etc., etc. If those are kicked out of too frequently, it's like, well, maybe this is the end of the match. It's like, you want the fans to buy into the fact that this could be the end of the match. It's like, he hits the F5. That's it. That should be it. But when you have too many people kick out of it, it's like, well, I don't know if this is it. Am I making sense right now, or am I just rambling? I think finishers should be more important. I think finishers should be more protected. The more they're kicked out of, the more they're just another move. I don't know what else to say. I'm in some kind of a mood today, so it's been a rough week. But before I go on any other tangents, before I go on any other rants, I'm going to close this episode of TSE. Thank you guys for sending in your questions. Keep sending them in. Send them on Instagram or Twitter at PA Sensation. Comment them right here on the YouTube page. I'd say you can send them to Facebook, but like I said before, I don't accept friend requests on Facebook from people I don't know. Again, nothing personal. Nothing against you guys. You guys didn't do anything wrong. It's just the policy that I have. That notwithstanding, I will see you guys next week for another episode of TSE. And until next time, keep it sensational and keep it here on No DQ.